Today I came to Cambridge to visit the famous Kettle's Yard house.
A space, an ambience and a home. This is how Jim Ede described the house he built in Kettle's Yard with his wife Ellen.
Jim Ede was an art curator and an art lover, whose dream was to create a space to both house the various artworks he collected throughout the years and host people and cultural events.
Ede was keen to point out that Kettle's Yard was not to be seen as a gallery space or museum, but as a continuing way of life.
When you enter Kettle's Yard, you feel the warmth of a home and you're surrounded by the beauty of art. Visiting Kettle's Yard is a completely different experience than going to a museum. Here, you can enjoy artworks in an informal and calm environment. There is no right or wrong in Kettle's Yard. The only rule to follow is to take your time walking around and to enjoy art in a simple way. Jim and Helen considered art as something that should be part of everybody's everyday life. I think it's interesting to see Kettle's Yard as the coming together of the experiences and beliefs of Jim and Helen Ede. The project of Kettle's Yard had always been in Jim's mind throughout his life. The travels he did, the people he met, and the things he saw shaped Kettle's Yard. That's why knowing a little bit about his life can be useful to understanding better and appreciating more Kettle's Yard. Jim Ede was born near Cardiff in 1895, and he studied at the Leys School in Cambridge from 1909 to 1912. He showed interest in art since he was very young, and he began training as a painter under Stanhope Forbes at Newlyn Art School, before the First World War interrupted his studies. Experiencing the chaos and horror of the war probably had an impact on his desire of creating a sort of artistic sanctuary in which people could enjoy art and find balance and harmony far away from the atrocity of the war. After the war, in 1920, he studied for a year at the Slade School of Art, and he then started working in the photographic department of the National Gallery while continuing to paint.
The following year, he was appointed assistant at the Tate Gallery in London, a change he described as phenomenal.
This was the same year that he married his wife Helen Schlepp, whom he had met in Edinburgh in 1913. Through his work at the Tate and his travels, he became passionate about contemporary art, because before that he only focused on Renaissance art. He met many English and international contemporary artists, such as Ben Nicholson, Henry Moore, Barbara Hepworth, Pablo Picasso, Joan Miró, and Pierre Mondrian. I gave up painting and became absorbed in the work of contemporary artists. I wrote a great deal about modern painting and sculpture, and came to know most of the leading artists of the day, and also the ones who were not yet known.
It was while working at the Tate Gallery in London that he formed relationships with Ben and Winifred Nicholson, and other artists whose work he began to collect.
Jim Ede was known for trying to promote the work of several contemporary artists. It was hard because of the conservative attitude of the establishment at the time. He formed many connections and friendships with artists acquiring their work before they were ever considered valuable. The works were often gifts or exchanges or bought for modest sums of money.
It was while living at 1 Elm Row in Hampstead in London during the 1920s and 30s that Ede began the practice of opening his house to visitors. His guests included a variety of artists, musicians, actors, and literary figures.
Jim and Helen were both interested in the social side of art. They hosted parties with people coming from the art, music, and theater world. There were so many people that sometimes it was not clear for guests who the host was. They cared about gathering people and mixing them. That's also what Kettle's Yard promotes nowadays. The many seats inside the house encourage people to sit and enjoy the space with the others around them. In 1935, he left the Tate because he was tired of its rigid and institutional atmosphere, and he couldn't stand the pressure of London anymore.
Due to ill health, Ede began spending time in Tangier in Morocco. He had a modernist house designed and built, there where he and Helen lived until 1952.
In 1936, he moved to Tangier with Helen, using the house they built there as a base for their itinerant lifestyle. During the war years, they traveled to the US, giving lectures with funds raised being contributed to Allied war relief. In Tangier, he built a modernist house called Whitestone. Ahead of his time, he embraced a minimalist lifestyle of interior design, with whitewashed walls and minimal furniture, an aesthetic that would remain with him throughout the rest of his life. He spent almost 20 years there, enjoying the ambience of Tangier and Morocco. Right after the Second World War, in 1945, 46 and 47, they invited over soldiers for rest and recuperation. This is another example of the fact that Jim and Helen were primarily interested in people relationships and how they could be enriched through the arts.
During his time in Morocco, Ede dreamed about creating a living space where he could display works of art and welcome people to an informal domestic setting. And in 1956, the Edes moved to Cambridge and created Kettle's Yard.
By that time, Jim had collected quite a lot of paintings by contemporary artists, and he decided he wanted to bring them all together. Jim and Helen bought 4 derelict cottages in a quiet corner of Cambridge on Castle Hill, which they renovated, giving birth to Kettle's Yard. They created both a house and a gallery to display Ede's art collection. In Kettle's Yard, it seems like time never passed. You have to ring a bell to enter, just like it happened when the couple lived there. The house is just as Ede left it, down to the very last detail, because nothing had been placed accidentally, and every single thing has been positioned with purpose and intent, like an orchestrated still life. During their time in Cambridge, Jim and Helen opened the doors of their house to people for a couple of hours every afternoon.
Among the many visitors were students from the university whom he welcomed into the house during term time.
Jim wanted to offer students something different from the formality of museums such as the Fitzwilliam in Cambridge. His philosophy was that art should be enjoyed in an informal and relaxed environment with no constraints. He invited over students to show them his extensive art collection, which was hung throughout the house, even in the bedrooms and bathrooms.
Ede was to loan out works of art to the students for them to hang on the walls in their college rooms.
Kettle's Yard encourages people to look closely at artworks and to notice things. It also contributes to appreciating more what's around them in their lives. The house is the reflection of the minimalistic philosophy of Jim Ede. There are no unnecessary objects and everything has its own purpose. Minimalism doesn't mean emptiness. The house feels rich and filled with beauty. The house is bathed in light, with skylights and windows allowing sunlight to move across the displays of art, found objects, and plants.
As he explained in his book on Kettle's Yard, entitled A Way of Life, which was published in 1984, he carefully arranged his collection of art, furniture, and objects in the house, which he had acquired throughout his life.
When you walk around Kettle's Yard, you have the feeling of actually participating in Jim's life. Each one of the pieces displayed in the house has a story related to his travels, friendships, and experiences. An interesting thing is that there are no labels on any of the artworks. This is a deliberate policy, as Jim Ede wanted visitors to look at works with no judgment, expectation, or prejudice. This also allowed people to discover new artists and enjoy work they may not have ever considered. What I find really beautiful and inspiring about Kettle's yard is the ability to create a harmonious space combining different types and styles of artworks. Jim Ede was a wonderful curator, and he arranged the works with different shapes, forms, colors, textures, sizes, and materials, creating a perfect balance. When you walk in the rooms of the house, you feel quite emotional and touched by the beauty of the ambience, and you get the feeling of being in an artistic sanctuary, which enriches your senses and guides you to a sort of meditative state.
In 1966, Ede handed responsibility of Kettle's yard over to the University of Cambridge, but he devoted his time to raising money for an extension to Kettle's yard and its ever-growing collection.
The new curators opened new galleries in 2018 and created new educational and learning spaces. Kettle's yard is still a live place, hosting many events with local communities and schools.